guys, hope everybody's well. In this video we're going to talk about hair typing. If you've been natural for any time, you've probably heard other naturals talk to each other about their hair, and when they do, they reference their hair type. So in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a basic overview of hair typing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and the cons to hair typing. I'm also going to demonstrate and discuss just some very basic science concepts that will help you understand why hair acts the way that it does, why certain hair is more shiny than other hair, or why certain hair is easier to moisturize than other hair. So what is hair typing? Hair typing is a system, a classification system that's used to classify or describe, define, categorize hair according to several different characteristics. The most common characteristics that are used in hair typing are essentially the curl shape or curl pattern, the curl texture, as well as the density of the hair or the thickness of the hair. There are different systems that are out there, so because of that, some measure some of those things and some don't. But the two most popular hair typing systems that are out there are the LOIS or LOIS system, and then the second system, the one that you most often hear about in the natural hair community, is the Andre Walker system. And Andre Walker is the person that most of us know as Oprah Winfrey's stylist. He's been her stylist for many years. And so he came up with this classification system that essentially types or defines hair. So the first system that we're going to talk about is the LOIS system, or LOIS. And it's called LOIS because essentially each of those letters describes the shape of the hair. So L, or bent hair, is kinky. And if you stretch kinky hair out, essentially it looks kind of like this. And you can, if you turned an L around backwards, you'd have a bunch of L's stacked on top of each other. A lot of people also in other hair typing systems refer it to as a Z shape. The O stands for curly because curly hair is essentially hair that is shaped like a C or an O. So if you stacked it on top of one another, you'd essentially have a corkscrew because you'd have a bunch of O's that are stacked one on top of the other. I is for straight hair because the I, similar to the hair, is straight. And S is for wavy hair because wavy hair takes on a very loose S-shaped pattern. So this is the LOIS system. The more common system that you'll hear about in the natural community is Andre Walker or Oprah Stylist's hair typing system. It's a two-part system that includes a number followed by a letter to describe your curl pattern or shape, as well as essentially your curl density. So the first first type is straight hair. And again, you can kind of see straight hair has that I shape. Type 2 is wavy hair. It was the S shape that you saw in the LOIS system. Type 3 is curly hair, that C or O shape that forms a corkscrew. And type 4 is kinky hair, which is an L or essentially a Z shape. Hair that is bent versus rounded at its end. I kind of prefer this system because I'm a person who, in thinking about things, kind of thinks of A plus B equals C. And if you look at the number system, as the numbers go up, the curliness goes up. So 4 is more curly than 3. 3, which is also numerically larger than 2, is more curly than 2. 2, which is numerically greater than 1, is also more curly or wavy than 1. So as the numbers go up, the curl pattern increases. So once you've figured out the number in the Andre Walker system, or the curl shape that you have, the next thing you'll want to do is figure out the letter. Essentially, kind of how tight is your curl. So essentially, if you were to look at your curls kind of from the actual O side, the shape of the curl, essentially going back to those old math lessons that we all grew up with, an A has a bigger diameter curl than a B does, and a B has a bigger diameter than a C does. So essentially, the bigger the diameter, the looser your curl. So a type A has a much looser curl, a much looser wave, or a much looser kink than a B does. A B has a looser curl, kink, or wave than a type C, but it's not quite as loose as a type A. And a type C has a very, very tight curl, kink, or wave. It's tighter than a B and tighter than a C. So as the letter goes up, the degree of curl also goes up. So essentially, as you think of the letter of your curl, think of these two slinkies. I have this one slinky here, and then I have this cute one that I got for Halloween here. Both of these are very curly, and both of these have very tight curls. But if you look at the size of the slinky, or the size of the O, this one is much wider across, it has a bigger diameter, than this one does. It has a smaller diameter. So measuring wise, this would be more like an A, this would be more like a B, and then you'd have one smaller, which would make it a C. So at the end of the day, the number and the letter for the Andre Walker system come together to form this hair typing system. So in type 1, you'll have A, B, and C. And for straight hair, that's kind of more about kind of whether or not the hair has body. It's still straight hair pretty much. But I once had a friend who her hair was so straight that she could put a curler in her hair for a week, and as soon as she took it out, within 5 minutes the curl would fall right out. She had no body to her hair whatsoever. So kind of when you think of straight hair, the A, B, and C really measures more of the body capability that the hair has. For wavy hair, if you're a 2A, you have a very loose S shape. If that you're a 2B, you have a moderately loose S shape. And if that you're a 2C, you have a very tight S shape. And the reason that again, I'll talk about this a little bit more, I don't get too caught up in hair typing because how big of an S, how tight of an S, every system defines that differently. I've heard people in talking about a 3C talk about a golf ball shape versus a chalk a stick versus, or stick of chalk versus a coffee stirrer. And I just don't think it's worth getting into that level of detail. Essentially, once you know the shape of your hair, is it a S for wavy, is it a C or O for curly, is it a Z or bent or L shape for kinky hair, at that point, to me, I just kind of think of it as some, more, most, or less, more, most. There's, you know, this is less curly or less wavy, this is more wavy, this is the most wavy of a S-shaped wave pattern. This is the least curly of the C shape, this is the more curly of the C shape, this is the most curly of the C or O shape. This is the least kinky of the kinky shape, this is the more kinky of the kinky shape, this is the most kinky of the kinky shape. So I prefer to think of it that way versus getting all caught up into the measurement of, is it the, you know, diameter of a golf ball, the diameter of a coffee stirrer. I just think that's not necessarily all that important, but you can certainly, if you're interested in kind of that level of detail, there's certainly lots of web pages, blog posts, things out there that you can just Google and find about that as well. So what are the pros and cons to hair typing? I quite personally am not a great big fan of hair typing, mainly because the pro of hair typing is that it gives us a common language so that when we're all talking to each other about our hair and comparing your hair, my hair, her hair, the products that we each use, the style techniques that we each use, it gives us at least a common language to speak from when we're talking about kind of comparing our hair. That's a good thing. The bad thing to me about hair typing is, one, as I shared in the previous discussion, there's not a universal system. So somebody may be talking from a different hair system than you. B, because there's not a universal system, there's nothing universal in the measurement of, well, how tight is a 3A versus a 3B or a 3C sort of hair type. And that to me is the other issue, is people get very caught up in A, B, C, and I just don't think that that's necessary because, like I said, A, everybody, you can go from web page to web page and find that the way that that's defined is very different. And B, there really is no universally accepted system out there. The other thing is that most of us have more than one hair type on our head. My hair type is very different in the crown of my head versus around my edges in the back. And that's very normal. A lot of people have different hair types on their head. So even though we may have similar hair types, it may vary in that maybe I have a similar hair type to you in one area of my head but not the other. The other thing, and the thing that I think is more important than anything, is that no two heads of hair are ever going to react the same way simply because of hair type. We may very well have the exact same hair type, but that does not necessarily mean that our hair is going to react the exact same way to a product or a technique or a style. So I think that that's where a lot of people get disappointed. They look at a pretty picture of somebody who's got a great curl style going on and assume, well, if I just use the products that that person is using, my hair is going to look exactly like theirs. And then they're disappointed because that doesn't happen. But no two heads are alike. Even if that your curl pattern, your hair type is the same, similar, even exactly the same, you just may not have that experience. So that's why I don't like hair typing. I think people weigh too heavily on hair typing. I think what's more important is to understand just some of the basic science or kind of the basic reasons why some hair types act one way and some hair types act another. So that's what we're going to talk about next.
Journey to my roots. Journey to my roots. Journey to my roots. Journey to my roots, man. You need your head done, holla at 'em. Your head down, yeah, 'cause you a new girl. Your head down.